Welcome to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack on FOXSOUL. I am Tammi Mack. One of my favorite 90s jams is Slow Dance, dubbed Hey Mr. DJ, by an unknown artist named R. Kelly and his group Public Announcement. The album put the group on the map, selling millions and going platinum, but the creator outshined the rest, becoming one of the biggest R&B artists and producers of all time. Born into the 90s, was released in 1992. The group disbanded in 1993 because its star, R. Kelly, bowed out to go solo, becoming a musical juggernaut all by himself. But apparently, there were some things happening personally that included more than serenading women. September of 2021, 29 years after his breakout album, the multi-platinum singer was convicted on 9 counts of racketeering and sex trafficking. It had been rumored for most of those decades that R. Kelly was having sexual relations with teenage girls. But at what point in the 29 years did it become unacceptable to listen to R. Kelly's music? Was it the first time he was accused of being a pedophile? Or was it the day he was convicted? The Business of Being Black is separating the art from the artist. Please welcome the co-founder of #MuteRKelly, Kenyette Tisha Barnes. Hi, Kenyette.
I'm doing great. Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Founder and CEO of Eno Power Indie, Emil Ekiyor. Hi, Emil.
I am well. Thank you for having me.
The CEO of Render Records, R. Bradley Davidson. What's up, Brad?
Hey, Tammy. Good to be here.
And content creator, Nikase Muso Jones. Hi, Nikase.
How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I always start with one question, and that's why should Black people care? After all, this is the business of being Black. So why should Black people care if R. Kelly is muted or not, Nikase?
Oh, man, Robert Kelly, geez. I think that people should care if he's muted because I feel like personally, if you're still listening to his music, you're kind of condoning the things that he's done. And you're saying that everything that he did, you can just turn a blind eye to, and it's okay and it's acceptable just because he made some good music that you can dance to. You know what? Let's just, ignore what he did and let's just keep the music. And in my mind, I'm like, no. That is not.
So let's talk a little bit. Let me ask the question even broader, which is the business of being Black today, separating the art from the artist. Why should Black people care if we separate the art from the artist?
Because he's a representation of us. He's a Black person. He's a Black artist. And he's the person that, if some Black people, when they say, hey, who's one of your favorite artists, that's going to be one of the people they name. So he's a representation of our culture. So you have him doing these crimes. I think that should be something important that Black people in itself should look at, like, okay, hey, if he's convicted of these things, why should I continue supporting that? Like, it's an important thing for people to be like, okay, let's separate the two. And well, let's not separate the two. And he's doing things that we shouldn't support anymore.
Emil, why should Black people care if art is separated from the artist?
I think it's very important that we separate the art from the artist. The artist, anyone that commits a crime should be punished, right? With the full extent of the law, 100%. And R. Kelly committed those crimes. He should be punished. Right? And he should go to jail or face whatever consequences that he needs to face. But he produced some songs and some music years ago that we all listened to. And we, in some cases, in a lot of cases, we enjoy that music. It brings back memories of our youth, memories of times in our lives when we listen to those songs. And it's hard for us to erase those things from our minds, right? When I listen to some of those songs, I remember my college days and what I may have been doing at a certain time. And it brings back memories for me in my life. But I'm not necessarily thinking about R. Kelly, the person. I'm listening to the song and saying, wow, I remember I was a freshman in college listening to that, right? Or I was in high school or wherever I was at that time. So I think we need to be careful to say that, yeah, we should stand for justice, right? And make sure justice is served. But we can't erase our life memories as well, because a lot of those things were times in our lives, right? We enjoyed it, we listened to it, and we're not condoning the crimes, but we're saying the memories we have from the music, the enjoyment we had by listening to those songs, we can still keep doing that, but not even think anything about R. Kelly when we do that.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, this is much broader than R. Kelly. I use R. Kelly as an example because he's the clearer example when it comes to separating the art from the artist. But we are speaking of any artist and not just musical artists. Let's not forget, there was a little ban on Bill there for a while, Bill Cosby, if you will, and the Cosby Show. So it does become important to know why Black people should care about the art versus the artist. How? Why? Why should Black people care about separating the art from the artist, Brad?
I agree with both Nikase and Emil's responses, and we should care. I mean, I think that if those victims, in the case of R. Kelly, were not Black, I think this may have been resolved sooner. So we should care. And like I said, I agree with both Nikase and Emil. There are people who absolutely will not be able to separate the two. They're absolutely not going to be able to listen the same way or watch whatever they were consuming after hearing accusations, people in litigation, or some that were actually convicted. Some people will not be able to separate it. However, to Emil's point, he got canceled. I got to cancel my memories too. I ain't do nothing wrong. I just like the beat. So
right. I got to cancel the first time I got my piece. First time I got something. I got
I'm sure somebody made a baby to that stuff. You got to forget that moment, or that road trip to Freaknik back in the 90s. People were listening to that stuff, and those memories are valuable. So again, yeah, he got canceled, but I can't cancel my memory.
Yeah,
I don't condone any. I do never can condone or justify any violence or abuse against anyone ever. But again, I think those that can't separate it, don't separate it. Don't listen to it. Don't watch it. Don't consume it. But we're all holding pictures of slave owners in our pockets. So how do we justify that?
I want to kind of speak to that because we were able, without a beat to give, to cancel Chrisette Michelle for performing for Donald Trump. So I want to be
before you speak to it, Kenyette, I want you to answer the question. Why is it important?
I'm going to answer the question. I just really want to say that. So can we separate the man from the music? I don't know. Seems like she's ready. Age ain't nothing but a number. I mean, for me, the music, the art is literally a manifesto of a pedophile. So if you're asking me as a Black woman in America, who is a survivor, can I separate the two? Absolutely not. And I think we have to be super clear here. And I think your previous guest spoke to the fact that if these were white girls, we would have canceled him long ago. And the evidence supports that. Less than 3% of sexual crimes actually lead to conviction in the United States. And that number is eclipsed in half or more when the victims are Black women or women of color, or if the perpetrator is a Black person and the victim is a Black woman or girl. So I think we have to be super clear that when we're talking about our memories, and I'm old enough to remember Freaknik and, all the other step parties and house parties that happened in the 80s and 90s. And what I'm going to tell you is when I found out that R. Kelly was actually grooming and molesting and raping on video Black female children, you're damn right I can separate him from the music. I cannot separate him from the music because he is the music. The art is him. The art is who he is. He is the art. And his art speaks to that kind of predatory behavior. The other thing, too, is when we talk about separation, we also have to talk about how we are complicit in marginalizing his abuse. In 2002, that disgusting tape was the most bootleg tape in urban cities around this country. And people watched for either curiosity or sexual gratification, a 13-year-old Black girl being raped on film, and then say, well, we can't separate because, well, I have memories. Well, I have memories too. And part of those memories don't include the music of a pedophile. That memory I can erase very easily. I was an R. Kelly fan in the 90s, like many, but when I started hearing the stories of the young ladies, and it kept happening over and over again. And I am a huge hip hop fan, and I lived in the Northeastern Ohio area. So we had that sort of Cleveland to Chicago pipeline. So what was happening in Chicago, we knew about in Cleveland. And when R. Kelly would come to perform, a lot of the local producers would tell us, hey, be careful, because he likes young girls. So we knew. We just
So why should Black people care, Kenyette?
Because his victims are Black women and girls. That's why we should care.
I'm not speaking specifically to R. Kelly here, although that was the example that I used in our introduction. I'm speaking separating the art from the artist, period. Right. Why should Black people care about that?
We should care because we have to speak up as a collective against the brutality of people in this country, people who we give power to. We give power to celebrities, either through entertainment or music or politics. And when we find that those people commit these horrible crimes, we have to be able to hold that crime accountable. And part of holding accountable someone who makes their money off of public consumption of their art, we have to boycott that art as well. So I think
speaking of making money, I got to take a quick break so I can make mine on the Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack on Fox Soul. Welcome back to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack on Fox Soul. I'm Tammi Mack, and the Business of Being Black is separating the art from the artist. Please welcome the co-founder of #MuteRKelly, Kenyette Tisha Barnes, founder and CEO of Eno Power Indie, Emile Ekiyor, the CEO of Render Records, Brad Davidson, and content creator Nikase Muso-Jones is with us today. So I kind of want to get into this. I want to go a little hard. Let's talk about white celebrities. Let's talk about Elvis Presley, who married a very young teenage woman. Let's talk about Jerry Lee Lewis. Let's talk about several white actors or celebrities who've not been canceled, who've not had their works muted, for lack of a better word. They still play these artists on the radio. And Woody Allen, of course, we have to mention, who actually married the woman that he groomed, who happened to have been his adopted daughter. So why do we still see these works in the play? And why does this not matter in our society like an R. Kelly or a Bill Cosby? It seems as if muting just appeared when powerful Black celebrities started to come to their demise. Emile?
So I think that's a good point. But I do want to start by saying this, right? Because a lot of times when this kind of conversations happen, people misconstrue. There's no defending what R. Kelly or anybody that commits a crime does. When you commit a crime, you should get punished. We should all champion that you get punished, right, for committing a crime, hands down. What we are tending to do now is we want to always go back in history or go back in time to erase everything, right? So many people do things like all the names you just mentioned, right? I think one of the things she shared was because it was Black women. If you rape white women, you should be punished, and we should come down.
But hard. I think he was speaking specifically to why should Black people care. I want to make that clear.
Yeah,
but Black people, we should care not just because it's done to our own. We should care for any human being that does anything wrong to another human being and make sure they get punished if it's against the law. We should care because we should be careful the way we draw that line in what we call celebrities or people we celebrate, right? If it's Mike Tyson, if it's your local athlete or basketball player that does something, should we not watch the basketball game anymore? Or should we just shut the TV down and say we're not watching NFL games? If someone is found guilty and punished, right, you are punished and you should be punished for the crime. What we're saying is we're not condoning it, but when I listen to those songs, I'm not celebrating. I'm not thinking about R. Kelly. I'm listening to the beats. I'm listening to the music that I listened to when I was younger, right? But in my mind, I'm not uplifting and saying, "Wow, I love R. Kelly. I love this song. R. Kelly is a great artist." I'm just listening to a beat that I enjoy.
Well, why is it that you think white men don't get, or white people who have these indiscretions don't get the same public punishment as Black people?
And that's why I say we should, because the optics of us doing well on screen or whatever, it's not something that is mainstream still, even 50, 60 years after civil rights, right? It's still something that we are fighting to get done, where we are accepted in these forums, right? Your show as well. So we are fighting for acceptance. We're fighting our way into the door. We're showing that we have the skills to do all of these things. So canceling and I won't want to say cancel culture because that's a word everyone is using today, is something that we just should be careful about, and how we want to be judge and jury, right?
Yeah. So Brad, let's talk about this. Why? He mentioned Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson has not been separated after Mike Tyson obviously accused of raping a woman, and nobody stopped watching Mike Tyson fights. He did a whole one-man show that sold out, that Spike Lee produced. Michael Jackson obviously had been accused of being a pedophile, but we still listen to and love, and he is still played on the radio. Trey Songz in a bit of a trouble, but we still play him. Bill Cosby, the Cosby Show is still there, but there has always been talk around punishing these people publicly, but there's never talk about punishing white people publicly. Why do you think that is, Brad?
I think because the people that own the platforms are white. I think the people that own the streaming services, the networks, the television stations, the syndication companies, I think that's why. I just saw Vicky Cristina Barcelona on the Movie Guide. That's a Woody Allen movie just a couple days ago. And it crossed my mind, like, okay, you'll never hear certain people on the radio anymore because of things that were rightfully convicted of, and hopefully that they will get their due justice. And I hope that the victims get their due justice. But they still play the movies that Harvey Weinstein produced. Those movies aren't being banned. And I'm not saying that that he shouldn't be because they weren't. I'm not saying that at all. But we do have to look at, why is there a double standard? There obviously is.
Okay.
I wanted to
see you shaking your head. Yes, let's go.
Let's piggyback off of what he was saying, because I don't want to be that typical Black person that always says white people just get away with it. But living in America, they do get away with a lot of things. And unfortunately, I feel like when society has that opportunity to kind of put Black people on that pedestal, like, see, this is all the things they've done wrong. So let's just make a spotlight on them, because history always shows if they're gonna have that opportunity to embarrass Black people, why not? Let's choose a public figure. And why they still support these white people after it's been proven time and time again that they've done the same crimes that, these Black artists are being punished for. And I agree with Brad. It's just the people that's running the
platforms.
Platform.
Yeah. Kenyette. Do we watch these Harvey Weinstein movies? Do we watch the Woody Allen movies? Do we listen to Elvis Presley? How does this work that we not hold them accountable publicly and mute all of their works?
So I want to go back to the question asked to the former guest, and then I'll deconstruct that one. The question is that, number one, when we think about the level of activism that went into something like a Mute R. Kelly, that was grassroots activism. That wasn't white people allowing us to do anything. So I want to be super clear about that. I do acknowledge that there are racial double standards. But when we talk about sexual crimes and gender-based crimes, you tend to see silencing across the board. The other thing I want to mention, Roman Polanski, You mentioned Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein was convicted. You mentioned Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey is now facing conviction. You mentioned Woody Allen. There have been activist groups from Woody Allen to the Playboy Mansion since the 70s. The issue is many people don't know about these groups because they're grassroots feminist organizations. They don't have a platform. They don't go on social media. And people have been protesting and speaking out against these men for decades. The other person is Dr. Luke. Dr. Luke, Marilyn Manson. There are survivors who are coming out against Dr. Luke and Marilyn Manson. So I think part of the reason why we see, the optic seems is that the only people getting canceled are the Black guys. I think a lot of that has to do with the level of activism and the fact that a lot of this activism gets attention. Why is that? I don't know. A lot of this activism is also being led by Black women. So I do believe that all of these people should be held accountable. I haven't listened to a Michael Jackson song in years. I don't watch Woody Allen movies. I knew about Harvey Weinstein before people could spell Weinstein. But the thing is that people who have been in the trenches, people like Tarana Burke, people like Jamila LaRue, people like myself who have been talking about this for decades, and our silos have been silenced and ignored. So do I think there's a double standard? I don't really think so. I think that the only double standard is gender-based double standards. And it appears as if that because R. Kelly and Bill Cosby is sort of getting a little bit more attention, that it must be that it's against Black men. Do I acknowledge the historical double standards against Black men? Absolutely. I have Black male children. I have a Black male partner. Of course, I recognize it. However, I think to say that the Black guys are always getting punished and the white guys aren't, it's a little disingenuous. I think it is also a very banal.
Let's talk about that when we return.
Yes.
We're going to take a quick break. Come right
Yeah.
back on Business of Being Black. Welcome back to the Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack, and the business of being Black today is separating the art from the artist. Now, Kenyette, you were saying before we left that it's a bit disingenuous to say it happens to Black men or Black celebrities, but not white celebrities. But we did give a few examples, right. And so how could it be disingenuous if the examples show otherwise?
The examples that you're giving are of R. Kelly and Bill Cosby, but we don't talk about that. Kevin Spacey is facing conviction. But
I think that's a different. Hold that thought, because I want to, before you go down the line, I want to make sure we're clear here. When we're not talking about them being convicted, we're talking about separating the art from the artist. And so Mute R. Kelly came along long before he was convicted. We stopped playing his music on the radio long before he was convicted. So it's not the convictions that I'm speaking to. When I use Bill Cosby and R. Kelly, and I can even throw Dave Chappelle in here because they were talking about muting Dave Chappelle there for a minute. So I'm not necessarily talking about their conviction. I'm talking about not listening or watching or being entertained by them because whatever
that's what I was attempting to explain. So many people don't know that House of Cards was canceled. This was $1 billion a year production. It was canceled because of the allegations against Kevin Spacey.
It wasn't canceled. It wasn't canceled. Kevin Spacey was removed, but you are correct.
I understand.
Spacey was removed, and they did a whole nother.
Still watch it.
Yeah.
But the problem is that I feel like what's happening here when we talk about separation is that examples of separation don't seem to meet the criterion that people like as far as muting.
So is there a level? Are we talking levels here?
No, I didn't think so, but it appears so. I gave an example of Kevin Spacey and it's like, but this. And I guess my question is, when we talk about separation, Roman Polanski's work used to be shown in cinema classes around the country. Several colleges have come out to no longer show his works as part of cinematic history. We talk about, you can listen to this person. How often, we're talking about Black people, how often are people actually aware of the catalog of art of these people? And for those of us who are somewhat who are also activists who have followed the feminine activists around this artwork, you can see that there has been some degree of cancellation. But I feel like because it's not reaching to the level of an R. Kelly or Bill Cosby, that it's not valid. So I just want to just put that as
go ahead, Brad. Got it.
So I do want. Okay, so I interrupted no one, and I'm just asking for the same respect. And what I also really want to be crystal clear about is that separating the art from the music as Black people, when we talk about sexual violence, okay, because there's other types of things too. Sexual violence tends to be intraracial, which means that if the victims of sexual violence are Black women, the perpetrators are most likely Black men. If the victims are white women, the perpetrators are most likely white men. So when we say the business of Black people, my belief is that we would want to make sure that Black women and girls are just as protected from gender violence as we want to make sure that Black men are protected from being held accountable for committing the gender violence. So that's kind of, you can put a period
there. We've got 30 more minutes of the show. You have time. Brad, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we're talking about separating the art from the artist, not just punishment. So yes, Harvey is in jail, but those movies are still available to watch. I don't think Woody has been convicted, but those movies are still widely available. Yes, we know he's
R. Kelly's music.
Sorry.
And so is R. Kelly's music.
Yeah, but the platforms as a whole were like, take it down. Whereas the platforms that host and put these movies out have not said take it down. They have not. You can still watch House of Cards on Netflix with Kevin Spacey in it. It is not being removed. Yes, he was fired, but they didn't remove all of the content. And I'm not saying that.
Show.
Huh?
You can still watch the Cosby Show on syndication.
You can, but not everywhere that you used to be able to.
So here's
but let me
hold that thought, Emil. Go ahead, Brad.
This one part. I am not saying that he should not be muted. I am not saying that, but I am saying that there is a double standard. And what I am saying is that you can still consume, watch, listen to a lot of art put out by people who have not only been accused, but have actually been convicted. It's just the way it is. It is just the way it is. And yeah, I'm sure there's a bar somewhere where you can find R. Kelly music, but I think overall, all of the streaming services, if I'm not mistaken, have pulled it down.
You're mistaken.
Okay. Well, certainly Pandora has made it so that R. Kelly is not available readily.
Curated.
You have to find it. You have to find
it. So you can still search for it.
So
okay.
Yeah, you can still search for it.
I stand corrected on that then. I stand corrected on that.
Emil, go ahead, Emil.
My question to everyone is, we're trying to create levels as far as the severity of a crime, right? I have 7 sisters. I have a wife. So nothing against women is condoned in any way in my house or around me if you do anything against women. We're not even having that. But are we saying that if you shoot somebody at a club or murder somebody or harm somebody hard, we can listen to your music? What crimes, because the argument...
Well, you bring up a very excellent point, because there have been people in the hip hop arena who have shot people, who have killed people even, and we still listen to their music.
The people that sell drugs. So how do we say, okay, this crime is worse than this crime, and because you did this...
I think it's something that humans do on a whole, though. We categorize crimes, we categorize sin. And, we think deeper about one thing than another thing. Nikase, I want to get you in on this.
Yeah, people tend to, I see the question that he's asking. People tend to categorize different sins and things like that. Personally, for me, your wrongdoing, if it's hurting our culture in any way, I'm not supporting you anymore, point blank, period. So even when it comes to the artists that their songs is nothing about drugs, is everything about drugs, killing, this and that, you don't have my personal support anymore because...
So Nikase, you don't listen to Tupac either? You don't listen to Dr. Dre?
I actually do not listen to Dr. Dre. Once I actually learned his history with his domestic violence with women, I actually do not listen to Dr. Dre anymore.
Do you listen to Toni Braxton? Do you listen to Mary J. Blige?
I do not anymore. After I learned their history, but the thing is, for me, I feel like there's not necessarily a severity of crimes. For me, it's like more so how remorseful are you after certain things? Like, say, for example, if you were glorifying drugs before and you have no remorse about it, you don't care about the situation, you don't care what you've done to the community, I can no longer support that. But if you came out years later, you understand the wrong that you've done in our community, the wrong that you've done to the people that listened to you in the past, then maybe I can say, okay, clearly that person has learned from their mistakes. But if
you're a Jay-Z fan.
No.
So can I say this also?
No.
Wait, what Toni Braxton do?
And I say that because Jay-Z is that person that you're talking about right now. He's the person that has completely changed his life around and acknowledged his wrongdoing, everything you just said.
But there's also an argument to be made that we want that music to continue to play so he continues to earn dollars, so the women he harmed could sue the heck out of him and get that money, right? So there's an argument to be made that if you were found guilty, R. Kelly, right? I'm going back to that, right? And you are going to be sued civilly by this woman who you abused.
Yes.
Right? We want this woman to get money. Right? We want any dollar that comes to R. Kelly to go right to this women that he abused, right?
We would prefer for people to not abuse Black women. I think that's what we would prefer.
I'm 100%
Let's take a quick break and come right back, because like Nelly said, it's getting hot in here. We'll be back. Back to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack, and we have, I would have to say, a powerful and passionate group of guests today. So the Business of Being Black is separating the art from the artist. Please welcome the co-founder of #MuteRKelly, Kenyette Tisha Barnes, founder and CEO of Eno Power Indie, Emile Ekiyor, the CEO of Render Records, Brad Davidson, and content creator, Nikase Muso Jones. So let's talk about, let us talk about what you were mentioning before we stepped away for break, Emile. You're basically saying that in order for women to win, to get money from a civil suit, because we want these women to be made whole financially, we have to keep listening to the music, or the music has to continue to be produced so that they could generate that money?
Let's explain that, right? Let's not make this about just sexual abuse. Let's talk about crimes, right? So let's not say if an artist shoots somebody at a club, right? And that person is going to sue that artist to get reimbursed for that crime, right? We want that person to be able to get as much money as possible for the crime that was committed against him for being shot.
And right? In exchange, you're saying that we have to continue to support that person's art.
It's an individual choice to not support, right? If you choose not to listen to an artist, hey, I don't think you're crazy for doing that. That is your choice. Now, if you try to say that everybody else should follow your individual choice, and there's something wrong if you're not following that individual choice, then I think that's where we should have conversation as far as, hey, look, you believe that, and that's okay. I respect your beliefs. But at the end of the day, right, that artist is going to be punished. We're not the judge and jury, right? We have the justices. They're going to go to jail, like you said. All those names you listed, they're going to get punished. They're going to go to jail. And if they get sued civilly to get compensated for the harm they did, the people suing them have every right to get as much money from them as possible.
All right, Kenyette, go.
All right. So first of all, I do want to talk about sexual violence in this example, because that was how the conversation began. The women should want the artists to make more money so they can get sued. So as someone who has spoken to several survivors of Robert Kelly, not one of them stated they wanted money. They all wanted conviction. They wanted, and some wanted an apology, an acknowledgement for what he had done to them. I think we have to be super clear here that In many states, with the exception of felony murder and some other racketeering federal charges, most of these crimes have a statute of limitation. So for a lot of survivors, their only recourse is a civil lawsuit. And I do want to be careful that we are essentially supporting art so that artists who are problematic can have a bank account to pay off people they harmed. I think that is ludicrous. I think that is absurd.
I want to ask you, Kenyette, if R. Kelly were not, or rather, if R. Kelly were exonerated in his case, would there still be a case to not listen to his music?
He won't be exonerated. I think that's a hypothetical that won't happen. Yes, I still believe so, because over, countless women and young men have come out against his behavior. And there's a difference between someone being not guilty in our criminal justice system and someone being not having committed the offense. So
can you explain that, please?
I was about to. So convictions, that happens within our criminal justice system. You're guilty or not guilty based on the preponderance of evidence presented by the federal state prosecutor. And that doesn't mean that you did it. So if you did it and you are found not guilty, it means that you are not guilty by the court. It doesn't mean that you didn't do what you were accused of. And so to answer the question, Tammy, yeah, if he's by some hook or crook or by the shifting of the moon phase or whatever, he is released from detention. Yeah, I would still not listen to the music because it doesn't mean that he didn't do what he did.
Okay, so let's talk about let's talk about, I know I mentioned Toni Braxton and I also mentioned Mary J. Blige earlier. So I want to make it clear, they haven't had any offenses that I'm aware of, okay? They seem to be crystal clean artists, but the reason I brought their names up was because I asked Nikase if she would listen to Dr. Dre music, if she listened to Jay-Z music, if she listened to Tupac, and she said no. And I said, what about Mary J. Blige and Toni Braxton? And the reason I asked that question is because they have both been produced by Dr. Dre. And Dr. Dre also produces music for Burt Bacharach. Who knew, right? And so just how deep do we get with an artist when it comes to their indiscretions? Does the entire cast of The Cosby Show have to suffer because Bill Cosby had an indiscretion or two or three or years worth of them? Do Toni Braxton and Mary J. Blige, do they have to be punished because their music was produced by Dr. Dre or their music was produced by R. Kelly? And I mentioned Dr. Dre because he himself has been accused of battering women. So, and he has since apologized for that and said that he was crazy, his mind, he wasn't right. So he has apologized for it. But just how far does the punishment go, Brad?
I think if we take a deep dive, not even a deep dive, not even a shallow dive, if we dip our little toe into the background of artists, producers, painters, poets, singers, rappers, actors, I mean, there would be nothing left to consume, I think, if we decided, it's all problematic. So I think it's up to the individual to decide. I can't view it the same. I can't consume it the same. I can't listen to it the same. But again, back to what I first said, I ain't do nothing wrong. If I want to listen to it to remind me of my memories, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I really don't. And I don't think there's anything wrong with anyone who says, I can't separate it. I think you have every right to feel the way that you feel. And so does the person who says, you know what, this reminds me of like my 12th grade prom. I mean, we all know, churches, everybody was singing I Believe I Can Fly. Everybody. That wasn't just in the hip hop circles. That was a huge worldwide smash. Wow. So we can never think about those memories again. I think it's unrealistic. I do.
I think the bigger conversation also is the pedestal that we put our celebrities on, right? I think
great point.
That's the overall lesson that we should be learning, because we raise people up like Bill Cosby. I mean, Bill Cosby was the epitome of a family man. Like every Black man was like, I know growing up was like, man, that's the dad I want to be, right? but we raised them up. But that also taught us a lesson that, okay, they're human beings too, and they probably do crazy stuff too, right? So I think the lesson is, let's not raise these people up to be flawless, right? And then when we find out something, we get so hit by what we find out. But also is respecting each other's views. I totally respect the view that, hey, look, if he did this and he needs more punishment, that's that view. But I also come from the school that when you go and you get justice, and no different than O.J. Simpson, right? There are people that believe it's not enough. O.J. was guilty no matter what. And then they're going to go with that till the day they die. And O.J. is going to get even more and more and more. They're going to try and convict him, everything. So if we start having those opinions and start doing things like that, we don't need a justice system.
That is a very good point. OJ was found not guilty in the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson, and he's still running around being accused of murdering Nicole Brown Simpson. So that is interesting, but it goes to Kenyette's point that just because you get found not guilty doesn't mean you're not guilty in the eye of the public. But it goes to your point, Emil, then what do we need a justice system for? Let's just everybody decide who's guilty and who's not. And make our moves from there, right?
Well, I think there was something that was stated that I really wanted to touch on. I think it's important is that, there are people who have done good work, and, bad people can do good things. I mean, Stalin, Mussolini, Idi Amin, even Hitler used to, rescue street dogs. I mean, these people have a history of doing good things, but they've also done really horrible things. And at some point we have
Let me take a quick break and come right back. Hate to disturb you. We'll be back.
No, it's okay.
Welcome back to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack, and the business of being Black is separating the art from the artist. Please welcome the co-founder of #MuteRKelly, Kenyette Tisha Barnes, founder and CEO of Eno Power Indie and former NFL player, Emil Ekiyor, the CEO of Render Records, Brad Davidson, and content creator, Nikase Muso Jones. Hello, everybody. So let's talk about athletes, since you are a former athlete, Emil. Trevor Bauer of the Los Angeles Dodgers was accused of sexual assault last year. As the case was being investigated, he missed the remainder of the team's season. But last week, it was determined that he would not face criminal charges. If he returns to baseball, are people wrong for cheering him, Emil?
So things like this are very challenging, right? Because you do want to respect people's opinions. And that's why we all live in this country, because you can have your opinion and voice your opinion and be respected. But if you were found not guilty by a jury of your peers, right, in the justice system that we have, right, you should be allowed to go back to your place of work and earn a living, and because you were found not guilty. If we get to a point where that we become the judges and juries and we don't listen to what happens, then it's going to be a really, really different society we're living in.
Yeah. Nikase, he didn't even face criminal charges, and he had to sit out some games.
And he sat out those games because they wanted to go through the process of finding out what the justice system was going to come out with before they made a determination. And post that, they made a determination.
Nikase, what do you have to say about that?
As soon as you mentioned that question, I thought about the question you had earlier when it says, well, how far do we go as far as like supporting, continuous support for that person? Where as far as like the Cosby Show, should everybody else get punished? Him going back to that team is like, should the team be punished? Because basically he's a baseball player, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so if he goes back and plays the game, I don't see it as people cheering him on. I see it as people cheering the team on, but
he didn't even face criminal charges. He was accused.
Oh, well, if that's the case.
So my question is, like, how far does this go that when people are accused, we just snatch them away right away before even trying to figure things out? He was accused of sexual assault last year. The case was being investigated, and the criminal charges, he did not face criminal charges. Brad?
I mean, I don't think you can, counsel someone based off of accusations. I really don't. I mean, unless it's, I guess there's always going to be an exception. If there's decades of accusations and videos of such, then that's different. But one accusation with no charges, I don't know how you can punish someone for that. I just don't understand, because anyone can make an accusation. And we know it's happened to Black men for centuries that were falsely accused of crimes they didn't commit. So, accusations, I say no, unless there is a pattern. I mean, they say if it sounds like a duck and walks like a duck, it's a duck. I think that has to be looked at. But one accusation with no charges ever even filed, what is that? I don't know.
So let's talk about former President George W. Bush. He's now a painter. Can you admire his art without remembering him as the former president, along with his policies and what happened on 9/11, perhaps? Kenyette?
Absolutely, I can't. It's like, no. I saw his painting, and it's pretty banal, to be honest. As someone who's kind of an art connoisseur, I wasn't impressed. But yes, I would still, when I think of him, I think of the work he did that literally destroyed this country. And that is my fused opinion of him. He could recreate Rembrandt and Basquiat, and I would still not support his art.
So let me
You hard, Kenyette. You go hard.
So let me say this about George Bush, as you talk about Bush, right? And that's a good point Karen made. But I can also think of George Bush and think of all the great things he did in Africa and the millions of people that he saved from, by providing aid and aid. He did more.
But that was UNICEF. That wasn't Bush. That's UNICEF.
So
that
let's
wasn't Bush.
I want to grab everybody. Kenyette, how can we keep up with
Nigerians? I will tell you, George Bush.
I understand, but
George Bush did so much.
Hold that thought, Emil. Hold it. Kenyette, we can argue this all day long, okay? Trump did good things. Trump did bad things. Barack did good things. Barack did bad things. Kenyette, how can we keep up with your Blacktivism?
My Blacktivism, how can you keep up with me? I'm on all social media handles under Kenyette Tisha Barnes. If you really want to engage me, the best way to reach me is the old-fashioned Facebook.
I thought you were going to say the old-fashioned rotary telephone.
It gives me more characters, so you can have this conversation with me, and I'm actually not so bad. So Kenyette Tisha Barnes, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Kenyette Tisha Barnes, verified, because someone is consistently trying to be me. I don't know why, but
I don't think you're bad at all, Kenyette. You're just the right amount of good and bad. Bradley, what are some of the upcoming projects from Render Records?
I am co-managing a wonderful boy band named Futrell and an amazing jazz artist, a Grammy-winning jazz artist named Nabate Isles. And you can find me at F Frank N Nancy G Girl Music Biz, at FNG Music Biz on Instagram. And thank you, Kenyette, for your passion.
Musicians always want to know, are you taking new artists?
Sure. Hit me up on Instagram at FNG Music Biz.
Emil, tell us about, I'm sorry, say that again, Kenyette.
I was like, follow me back. And I didn't finish that question for you. So when we wrap up, if I can get 2 seconds to tell you about
we probably won't have time for that, because your 2 seconds is about 2 minutes. Emil, tell us about Eno Power Indie and the annual conference you've got coming up.
Yeah, so we have our conference coming up in June. Last year, we had over 140 speakers and presenters. This year, we probably have another 140. It's a whole week. But it's about things like we're talking about, controlling our narratives as a community. How do we tell our stories better and make sure the optics about us is the optics that really represents us in a positive way. So you have some wonderful speakers here that I would love to see about getting at my conference as well. So thank you so much. But it's stories of us told by us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for always being on the show when we call, Emil. Nikase, what can you tell us about your children's book? Yay, My Two Homes.
Yeah, so it's crazy that Emil says stories by us. It's just crazy.
Right?
I created My Two Homes based off of my stepson. And it's basically talking about a lot of our homes, especially in Black homes, we're either raised by a single mom, a single dad, and there's no book that's out there that's talking about the adventure and the good times that you can have experiencing the love from your mother's house and the love from your father's house. It's not always seen as a bad thing. So I just released that book, self-published it myself. So it can be viewed and purchased through my website, nikasejones.com, and everywhere. You can reach me there. You can just go to that website and find everything you need.
Yeah, and make sure you take note of how to spell Nikase so you can get to our website.
NICAISEJONES.com.
Well, it's time to move on to Hollywood Unlocked. Jason Lee and his cast and crew give us all the gossip. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Nikase, Emil, and Kenyette. That is The Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack on Fox Soul. Bye, everybody. Y'all have a great day.